Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking Cambodia's massive transformation in 2026, and we're going to explore exactly how a new government is completely overhauling its economic operating system. Now, why does this actually matter to you? Well, because the specific system upgrade could fundamentally shift where your everyday electronics, your car parts, and your clothes actually come from. We're looking at a country shifting gears from, traditional industries into a highly integrated, multi-node manufacturing powerhouse, one that could literally rewrite the map of global trade. It's a fascinating evolution, so let's map out exactly how they're pulling it off.
Here's our roadmap for today's explainer. 1. A new era begins. 2. The China Plus in shift. 3. Mega projects reshaping logistics. 4. Powering up green energy. 5. Navigating controversies and risks. And finally, 6. Cambodia's digital future. All right, let's dive right in.
Section 1. A new era begins. To really wrap our heads around Cambodia's current metamorphosis, we've got to start with the foundational upgrade at the very top of its leadership. Think about this. In July 2023, nearly 4 decades of static leadership under Hun Sen finally ended, making way for a highly anticipated generational shift. His son, Hun Mane, became prime minister the very next month, bringing in an entirely new administration. And, this changing of the guard is being watched incredibly closely around the world, because it marks a clear pivot. Now, in 2026, we're seeing this new cabinet really hit its stride. They aren't just, sitting back in the driver's seat. They're actively reshaping the nation's foreign policy, courting new international investors, and heavily diversifying their economic partnerships. This new cabinet immediately launched what they call the Pentagonal Strategy. It's a 5-step blueprint aimed at pulling the country into high-income status by 2050. And the goals laid out here, they are highly ambitious. They want to maintain a robust, crisis-resilient GDP growth of around 7%, while simultaneously creating high-quality jobs and driving poverty down to single digits. All of this, by the way, while improving governance and ensuring climate resilience. Walking that tightrope, pushing for massive industrial growth without wrecking the environment or triggering economic instability, is incredibly difficult. This isn't just about simple growth. It's a full-scale structural modernization.
Section 2. The China Plus end shift. Let's look at how Cambodia is completely repositioning itself within global supply chains.
We're moving way beyond simple tariff dodging here. A few years ago, global companies used the China Plus One logic to basically just move their final assembly across borders. But today, we're in the China Plus N era. Think of it kind of like a decentralized cloud network instead of just a single hard drive on your computer. Companies are creating parallel nodes so that if one country experiences a shock, the whole supply chain doesn't break. For example, as labor costs and regulations tighten up in neighboring Vietnam, massive manufacturers are actually establishing parallel backup sites right next door in Cambodia. This is fueling a massive Vietnam plus one dynamic, putting Cambodia right at the center of the action.
And the global markets are absolutely responding to this. A staggering $5.2 billion in foreign direct investment flowed into the country leading up to 2025. What's absolutely crucial to note here is that 70% of this capital is coming from China. That's geopolitically significant. It shows that major Chinese firms are preemptively offshoring their own manufacturing to secure their supply lines against future global trade wars. This isn't just a temporary bump in the numbers. It represents heavy, long-term physical production capacity permanently taking root across the Cambodian landscape.
And the immediate payoff is already here. In early 2026, we're seeing a near 40% export surge across major special economic zones, or SEZs. For those unfamiliar, an SEZ is basically a designated area subject to different economic regulations than the rest of the country, specifically designed to attract foreign investment through things like tax incentives and streamlined customs. These zones, especially in Phnom Penh and Condol, are seeing massive employment growth. Plus, they're expanding way beyond just basic garments and textiles, moving heavily into complex electronics and auto parts.
Section 3. Mega projects reshaping logistics. Because as we know, an upgraded manufacturing sector desperately needs upgraded hardware.
You simply cannot become a high-level supply chain hub without the roads, ports, and airports to support the actual movement of goods. These aren't just isolated highway or port projects we're talking about. They form a fully integrated multimodal web. Think of it as a giant new nervous system for trade across the lower Mekong. The southern, eastern, and northern corridors are specifically designed to work together, directly linking deep-sea ports with cross-border economic zones and massive agricultural hubs. The ultimate goal here is to entirely reshape how goods move through Southeast Asia, slashing both transit times and shipping costs for global manufacturers. Which brings us to arguably the most ambitious infrastructure project in modern Cambodian history, the $1.7 billion Funan Techo Canal. Currently under construction, this 180-kilometer waterway will connect Phnom Penh directly to the Gulf of Thailand by 2028. See, for decades, Cambodia has had to rely heavily on navigating down the Mekong River through Vietnamese ports just to get its goods to the global market, and that dependency costs time and money. This game-changing canal will completely bypass Vietnam, allowing cargo barges to move directly to the sea and cutting a massive 8 to 10 hours off shipping times. Prime Minister Hun Manet described the strategic motivation behind this massive undertaking quite simply as breathing through our own nose. It's a really powerful metaphor for true logistical independence and sovereignty. It's all about securing their own supply lines and export routes without having to constantly rely on their neighbors for port access, finally giving Cambodia ultimate control over its own economic destiny. Let's expand our view to the sky and sea, because this infrastructure web extends outward. The new $2.3 billion Techo International Airport, which is a 4F-rated hub, now allows for direct, long-haul heavy air cargo. Meanwhile, Sihanoukville Port is undergoing a $350 million expansion to reach a depth of 14.5 meters by 2027, right alongside the development of the Kampot multipurpose port as a second deep-sea gateway. Historically, shallower ports meant cargo had to be loaded onto smaller ships and then transferred at massive hubs like Singapore. Deepening these ports means massive ocean-going megaships can now dock directly in Cambodia, completely cutting out the middleman and shipping straight to Europe and the US. Section 4. Powering up green energy. A modernized supply chain definitely requires modernized power. Industrial growth simply isn't possible without reliable and sustainable electricity. And to meet modern ESG supply chain standards, Cambodia has set a highly ambitious target of running on 70% clean energy by 2030, leaving only 30% to non-renewables. They're leaning heavily into hydropower and solar. It's a loud, clear signal to massive foreign tech and manufacturing investors that the country is prioritizing carbon neutrality, which, as we know, is increasingly a hard requirement for global brands looking to set up shop. But relying heavily on hydropower has one major vulnerability: droughts. Enter a $430 million investment for 300 megawatts of wind energy in Mondulkiri, including a major facility launching right now in 2026. By adding wind power to their portfolio, they're brilliantly solving the dry season energy drops that historically plagued their grid. Look, factory downtimes ruin supply chains, and investors absolutely hate unpredictability. Because wind energy can be generated even when river water levels are critically low, this investment ensures a stable, year-round power supply for all the new factories popping up. Section 5. Navigating controversies and risks. As with any massive system upgrade, there are critical friction points we have to discuss. There's a really stark contrast in perspectives regarding the massive relocation of 10,000 families near the Angkor Wat Temple complex. On one side, Amnesty International and UNESCO have raised severe alarms about human rights, labeling the process as mass forced evictions. Conversely, the Cambodian government maintains that these relocations are entirely voluntary and absolutely necessary to protect the historical and structural integrity of the World Heritage Site from sprawling informal settlements. It's a very high-profile friction point drawing intense international scrutiny right now. Furthermore, these geopolitical headwinds and internal controversies represent the most significant systemic risks to Cambodia's macroeconomic stability. Let's quickly break them down. First, border disputes with neighboring Thailand occasionally flare up, causing immediate disruptions to vital cross-border trade routes. Internally, there is heavy scrutiny from rights groups over the suppression of political dissent, highlighted by arrests of government critics, including 3-year sentences simply for social media posts. And externally, both the US and neighboring Vietnam are intensely monitoring the security and environmental implications of the new Funan Techo Canal, fearing it could alter regional water dynamics or even be leveraged for foreign military access. So these are serious, real-world hurdles. Section 6. Cambodia's digital future. Finally, let's take a look at the software upgrade. To truly become a high-income country, Cambodia has to look way beyond pouring concrete for factories and physical infrastructure. They are actively shifting toward a knowledge-based economy.
The National Startup Strategy for 2026 to 2030 lays out a blueprint covering regulatory support, access to finance, talent development, capacity building, and market expansion. But what does a foreign tech investor actually see here? Well, they see a young, highly connected population. By actively working to simplify business registration and boost STEM education, the government is changing the reality on the ground, creating a really fertile environment for venture capital to flow directly into local tech startups.
So, the big question: will Cambodia 2.0 truly overcome its systemic risks to become the ultimate supply chain hub of Southeast Asia? The concrete is being poured right now, the billion-dollar ports are opening up, and a new generation is firmly at the wheel. But the ultimate test lies in navigating the incredibly complex geopolitics of the next decade. It's been an absolute pleasure guiding you through this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep looking at the data, and I'll catch you on the next explainer.